start. So we're just going to start the panel. All the speakers here, they're going to spend around 5 minutes introducing themselves, telling their story. If anyone has any questions or clarification in between that point, please raise them. But then we'll leave a question and answer session at the end, or we'll have a fair amount of time for that. So with that, I'll introduce you to Morgana.
Hi everyone, my name is Morgana and I'm the international coordinator of YouthRise. This is my team, you can see them around. And I'll start with a short story. It comes from my country, but then I'll tell you about the broader context of what happened. So what happened last year in my country, and this is a new experience, and I come from Lithuania. We had, for the first time, the drug use criminalized a year ago. Since then, 1,000 criminal cases were opened, more than 1,000 criminal cases were opened in Lithuania. And I can tell you the profile of the criminal, that would be more often he than she. Around 17, 18 years old. And how heavy is the crime? 5 grams of cannabis usually. So our government says you have to know what is awaiting them. And I'm here today to say that we do know what is awaiting us. Most probably a little bit less opportunities with a career. Might be a short holiday in jail, starting from 2 years to 10 years, depends. And also a break in our studies and in our development. So these are several cases from my country. Emil, a 17-year-old, he identified himself as a future programmer. He had good results at school, ordered 5 grams of hashish online and was charged with drug trafficking. Laura, a doctor-to-be, 19 years old student, shared cannabis with a group mate, was charged with drug dealing. Milda is a student in Academy of Arts. She had an ecstasy pill in her pocket. She was detained, taken to the police office. She was charged with possession. 2 years of imprisonment is the minimum sentence, unless there are exceptions made. But the question here is the clash between the youth and the situations when this happens, and the clash between the youth and the police. The police thinks they are saving us from perhaps bigger harm. So the experience of being knocked to the ground, handcuffed, interrogated, searched all over, threatened, forced to cooperate, leaving the police office having betrayed 3 or 4 of your classmates, and going home wondering, am I a criminal? Am I? And why is this system so passionate about convincing me that I am? So then years later I meet my colleagues, and it seems that in countries so different as Nepal, Pakistan, Indonesia, Ireland, born at a similar age, we experienced very similar things. So then I asked Ishwa, was like, did you feel a criminal? No, neither did I. Completely different worlds, very similar experiences. So so that's why we discussed the law enforcement problem, the legislation, but also how we encounter the police and how we see the police, who are supposed to protect and help us, but it turns to be a very different connection that we have. We discussed it in our team, in international team of the YouthRise, and we realized that this has to be one of our priorities in our strategy and the work we do. The cooperation with police and the youth when it comes to drug use. One last thing I want to say today is I come from the environment, from the country where my parents still believed that beating children teaches them something. So I remember each and single case of being beaten by my parents. I don't remember what it was about, but I will never forget those incidences. But then I meet my friends who are having kids now, and when I enter their homes, I see books about children's psychology and children's development. So if it can be done on a micro level of the family, it can be done on a macro level of a state when it comes to developing the skills and the knowledge of our children, teaching them, giving them, equipping them with the knowledge and skills, and then letting them make their own better decisions.
Cool.
Thank you.
Is there any point of clarification for Morgana? If not, then we'll go on to Ishwar.
Hi everyone, I'm Ishwar from Nepal. First of all, I'm highly pleased about the admirable effort of all involved stakeholders to make this forum possible. Also, it's a great honor of mine to be part of this prestigious event. Talking about youth experience on law enforcement in Nepal, I will start with a small story of Buddha. Hopefully you know him. So something like 2600 years ago, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautam, living in all comfort, left his injured wife, children, royal luxury in a search of curiosity to resolve the human frustration and in a search of inner peace. It started then and there. The world got the light of peace in form of Gautam Buddha, whose insights and findings still bless the millions of life positively throughout the world today. So this is a symbolic story because this happens to everyone during teenage. Many youths leave home, live regular life, looking for inner peace due to the chaos brought by this modern life. Search is still for the same, but the means have changed significantly with the time. So today, drug has become the way of gaining relief and peace, though it's temporary. And prime place for youth is home, where love has to reside. Home is for comfort, a place where, to save your future. But when homes became a home where loneliness lies more than warmth, then the gap remains between generation living in there. It pushes generation to somewhere else than it has to. And reality, our home of development countries are no more home of definition, especially for people who use drugs. So when home suffocates, we try to breathe outside, but when society is also not free from infectious air of traditional boundaries, I would say, then the question appears big: where to go, what to do, how to find a peace of mind beside the problem of career, children, family, etc. Youths of today's generation, especially in the development countries like mine, are in huge despair. We became victim in many fronts. They say we are cause of hate of family. We are weakness to feel ashamed of. We are villains. We are social disease in society's eyes. Moreover, we are untouchable, incommunicable, a true evil in all sense, I would say. So eventually, even a school, the place of imparting knowledge, becomes the detention camp of hatred. People whose drugs are humiliated, even expelled from there. Also, I have gone through these phases. I was hated in home. I was hated in school, expelled from society. Have been sent to jail in criminal case. My offense was nothing, just to consume drug. I would say just to choose a different ritual to find an inner peace. And the story doesn't end here. It continues today too. Still, many youths are there carrying similar plot, similar action, similar climax, but different ending, because most of them cannot educate themselves in uneven condition, and they cannot pat their arms by themselves and say everything's gonna be all right. But the bigger tragedy of these stories is that they are the stories of outcasted people whom nobody cared, not family, not society, not government. So they remain they remain and get continued with different names and characters. Now question is, where is government? Where is law enforcement? And answer is they are there, but not for the people who are victims, but more to victimize them further. Many policies contradicts to each other, which leads youth into turmoil. For instance, although needle syringe program are not unlawful, however, it is considered as a means to promote or facilitate the use of illicit drug and seen as counterproductive measures. Still, many people get arrested. Even I have been arrested for carrying needle syringe. And as a result, these arguments are accorded low weighting in policy analysis, and government continues to prioritize drug law enforcement over preventive or treatment-based response. Why it's happening is because the two ministries of same government sees the same problem through different lenses. Law enforcement agencies, for them it's a criminal offense, while for health ministry it is a matter of youth derailment and serious common issue need to be resolved for health perspective. So now what next then? I believe we need to play as a bridge to educate and support people who use drugs, their family, and even law enforcement agencies to form and implement policies effectively. Here, prime objective has to be safety first. Safety in life, safety in education, safety in career, safety in drug use too, safety in all walks of life, and especially legal protection and human rights are must. Nothing we need more in our policy, just an environment where people who use drugs can live and talk about their life and problem openly with everyone. By sharing and giving care and creating an environment based on love and compassion, not stigma and discrimination. We need to build a broken bridge between family, school, friends, society, government, where drug users are embraced, not outcasted. So I personally believe and I'm confident that it is possible. The story of Buddha can complete today too. The circle has to be made with connecting dots of many stories of present Buddhas. Thank you.
Is there any question for clarification? You were also working as an outreach worker at that time, were you?
Yeah, I should.
When you got arrested for carrying syringes. Peter?
I'm happy to be here after all those stories. I'm Peter from Belgium. I'm a Deputy Chief of Police. I still am, active service. And I'm also advocating for legal regulation of all drugs, which sounds a bit controversial, definitely in an environment like this one. But there's a story. I had been trained as a military officer and then I became a police officer, and so I'm really trained into the war on drugs. I've been fighting this for 23 years now and I'm still fighting it every day. And meanwhile, in my free time, I'm trying to advocate for some other drug policies. That's because my brother died 11 years ago from heroin, cocaine, legal medication and alcohol. And at that time I started to think differently about what are we doing? What are we doing with this drug policy? I remember when he was still alive that sometimes my co-workers called me, Chief, we have arrested your brother, what should we do with him? So then I had to reply, what you do with every other normal criminal. So he got arrested, had to spend the night in jail, and I perfectly knew what was going on in that jail, because I know police officers, I know my guys, I know what's happening in those cold police cells, and it was my brother spending the night in those environments. But what was I to do? I was a chief of police, I couldn't make an exception for my brother. So I can assure you those were difficult moments. When I'm listening to your stories, I have to acknowledge what you say is true. It is true, it is happening. It is happening every day, it is happening all over the world. It is happening in Belgium every day. So maybe you should have asked the police officer who's really into prohibition, and there are a lot of them walking around these rooms these days. We tried to intervene this morning in an event and we didn't even get a chance because it was full of officers, militaries fighting the war on drugs, and they really believe what they are doing. But we didn't even have the chance to ask some critical questions. And this is, I think, a nice opportunity to confront you with what I do every day, so I'm not going to speak too long. I hope you will ask me some very difficult questions later on, which is, so I'm counting on you not to make it easy for me, because if not, then we are all going to applaud for each other, and then these side events do not matter. So please make it difficult for me. I heard people saying I hate police, and I really believe it. And definitely in an environment like this, I think a lot of you will have some bad experience with police officers. People who use drugs are still criminals according to the law, according to the international treaties. We must fight criminality, we must fight people, we must incarcerate people, we must arrest people, search them, put them nude in front of us, make them bend over in order to see that there's nothing hidden in their vagina or anus. And I can really imagine that this is very, very stigmatizing. We are part of the problem. And as a spokesman of LEAP and as a spokesman of anyone's child, I have no problems in admitting that we are part of this problem. I think that's enough for an introduction.
If anyone is a staunch defender of prohibition, you'll have ample space to argue your point later. Joanna? Can you?
Well, I'll go quickly on the decriminalization policy, Portuguese one. I'm from Portugal, but I wouldn't be that much focused in this reality. I would bring the opportunity to analyze the whole spectrum of drug policy. Like we are here, an international system is completely prohibitionism oriented, and then until the legalization point we can find middle steps such as the penalization or decriminalization. So this was the approach Portugal brought 17 years ago. We are all aware of that. Many people have been talking, including here, on this topic. I just wanted to stress some points. Whenever youngsters or elders are caught by the police and taken to the dissuasion commissions of addiction, as they are called, even if 70% of the people are non-problematic users, this dissuasion has a paternalistic approach since people, and especially youngsters, have this intervention from the police. So the police goes to whatever is using drugs in public space, randomly, depending if well, for me, for instance, I would like to bring my own experience, but I never got caught, maybe because I'm white, maybe because I'm not really in public spots smoking sometimes, other times not, or whatever. But I got lucky because all my friends have been there, and all the people I know, even in schools, inside schools is also possible, the police goes there and forward people to a dissuasion commission. So the intervention, whenever the police arrives, is really prohibitionism oriented. They even tell you that it's illegal to use drugs, and that it's crime, and it's not a crime, okay? It's an administrative offense. It's not a crime, and it's not possible that police are not aware of the law they implement, because if I have to be aware of what is reinsertion, what is dissuasion, what is law enforcement, and what is treatment, they should have also know that people use drugs and there are harm reduction services available, and they do not know. So, and second point is this perspective on behavior control. So we try to change behaviors through this approach through psychologists and law and social assistant team. But in the end, the behavior is not changing, also because the occurrences of people taken, especially youngsters, to the Commission of Dissuasion are rising. So the behavior change is something that is not controlled by the policy change. And the third thing is that users still punished. They get a fine if they go there the second time. They can get a fine as well if they miss the first appointment and the dissuasion commission. And they can be invited to treatment, which is not invitation. they are obliged to go to treatment. If not, they have to do volunteer work, okay? Either getting into court, depending on the quantities that people have, because it's allowed that we can have like 10 diary doses. That means, for instance, 25 grams for weed, 5 grams for hash, 1 gram of speed, 2 grams of cocaine. But if it's more than this, court is the first option. And if it's not, it's depending on the behavior of the person and the intervention of the psychologist that is in front of you. So whenever people are taken by the police, they are afraid of the intervention of this abuse of authority, also stating that most of the times it's illegal and prohibited and crime when it's not. People go there and just lie to the psychologist. I'm not using drugs anymore, okay? I want to go home, so I will just lie, and I'll come back later on if they find me again. And that's how it works, and it's the stories that I have also with me. I have this story from Patricia and Guess that were caught on the going out from Boom Festival, and they had 2 joints with them, and I think 1 gram of speed, and they were taken to the police station, and they stayed there until going to the Commission of Dissuasion. So it's possible that people get stuck in the police stations too. For many hours, and even nights. If we are talking a special occasions such as New Year's, I know people that have been 2 nights in prison waiting for them being forwarded to a commission. Okay. Apart from that, I know also a story from a guy, João. He was in a school, he's 13 years old, and he was caught by the professor smoking hash, and they called the police, and the police was like, this is not with us, because we do have a special intervention with the police in school, the security public police, but it's about cities and not about villages, no? So there was this impasse, what the police does, what should we do, should we take them to the police of the Dissuasion Commission? And in the end, what I bring here is the need of integrate police also in these procedures, okay? Because if families got involved, whenever we are talking about a minor, we should also bring the police to the commissions to see how it works, the approach, and to not be only prevention abolitionism oriented, to be harm reduction oriented as well. Because what people need to be safe, and especially youngsters, is to be taught on the risks and on the pleasures of every substance, and to have harm reduction services such as drug checking services, either voluntary based appointments for whoever is looking for help regarding drug use, and not this obligation and compulsory treatment that still exists. And that's it. I know our situations are pretty much different, but I want to recall you, whenever you recall for decriminalization, also think that it's still a prohibitionist approach to drug use, okay?
Any question of clarification before? All right, Nick.
Hi, my name is Nick Crofts. I'm an epidemiologist. I can't work without PowerPoint, and I've never spoken for less than about 30 minutes in my entire life, so 5 minutes is a challenge. I wanted to start with a quick story, which is the other end of the spectrum of the stories that Morgana talked about. I worked a lot after the American War in Vietnam. A lot of refugees came to Australia from Vietnam. And I worked a lot with those young people who came as infants and children and grew up in Australia. And I have one particularly in my mind who stands for them, a bloke named Zung. At the age of 15, he finished his formal schooling. He was effectively illiterate in both languages. He had suffered racism every day of his entire school life. Whatever else you hear about Australia, there is still a lot of racism inherent in Australian society. At the age of 15, Zung is facing one of 2 futures. On the one hand, he's unemployable. I find that an impossible situation to empathise with. I cannot think of what being unemployable would be like. Meaningless to society. He's got a future. He might get menial jobs. He might eke out an existence, but it's a pretty powerless one. On the other hand, there's a trade offering to him, which he makes $5,000 a week. He has status, $5,000 tax-free. He has status amongst his peers. He has business to do and occupation. Every now and again, he has to go for a 3-month holiday in a holiday centre in the country where the food is great and the gymnasium is good, and he can make more business contacts and get better at his business. Is he in any way irrational to have chosen the second route, the route of heroin, the heroin dealing business? I don't think he's irrational at all. And that's my conclusion before I get into the talk. That the more I look at drugs, the more I see people. That the more I look at what we do about drugs, the more I see how very good we are at making things worse and how very poor we are at making things better. Where do I aim this when I press it? There. I'll actually talk about two quick case studies. Again, as an epidemiologist, an academic, I can't work without this sort of thing. But just two quick ones. This is a very recent one. It's about to come out in the Harm Reduction Journal, looking at street-involved youth who use illicit drugs in Canada, and looking at the reasons that they go to hospital and the very high rates of illness and trauma that they suffer. This is a study from some time back, 20 years back, that I did in Melbourne, looking at how young people started to use drugs. Particularly, I was interested in how they started to inject, because I was looking at the epidemiology of hepatitis C at the time. But a lot of them started with using amphetamines and then moved on to using heroin. And our national drug strategy at the time, the preface of our national drug strategy in Australia started with the exhortation that we must stop drugs from destroying our children's family and school lives. What we found with these 300 was that by the time they came to drugs, their family life had been well and truly destroyed. Their school life had been destroyed. Their schools, they were talked of as school failures. They weren't school failures, their schools failed them. They had high rates of experience, of adverse childhood experiences, mental health, homelessness issues. And the reason they got into drugs was far less to do with the drugs than with the society that it took them into, that they got acceptance, they got, again, like Zoom, they got business to do, they got social relations to follow through, which we're not offering in the other society that our governments and our societies offer them. Lesson being that if we look at the drugs, we miss out on all the other things that are behind the drugs with young people, when young people get involved in drugs. I'm very clear that the majority of people, young people who use drugs, do not have problems with them unless we get interfered and unless we interfere and make them have problems. Those who do have problems with the drugs and who have problematic lives because of their drug involvement are always there for other reasons. And if we look at the drugs and divert our attention away from the other reasons, why did the Australian government provide English lessons for Zoom? Why is there no rehabilitation counselling, employment counselling for Zoom? Why is government not interested in providing those services, but rather looking at ways to make things worse? Now, I want to leave you with just a little fantasy. I'm very involved. I'm the director of a centre called the Centre for Law Enforcement and Public Health. We work a lot with police and HIV in low and middle income countries, and police and public health issues globally. We currently, in most societies, we have two sectors. We have a law enforcement sector and we have a public health sector. In the law enforcement sector, we mix both catching criminal health sector, we mix both curing disease and promoting health and preventing disease. When it comes to allocating budgets, catching criminals always wins over crime prevention. When it comes to allocating budgets, curing disease always wins over health promotion. I would like to try a third way, which is to have a third sector where we bring together the activities of health promotion, crime prevention, community safety, well-being. We have a whole range of different disciplines involved in that. Now, whose responsibility would that be? There's a lovely book out at the moment which I recommend to you called The End of Policing by a bloke named Alex Vitale from Brooklyn. And he argues that over the last 40 years, police responsibility has grown so enormously in so many parts of life that police should not be in. There's a huge overreach in policing services. And he says police should get out of those areas, out of drugs, out of mental health, out of all sorts of different areas. I don't necessarily agree. I think there is a role, but I think the role is around partnerships. And I think there are a lot of efforts in many parts of the world now looking at different ways of restructuring the activities of police and public health to bring them together to look at effective, humane, human rights-based and evidence-based ways of tackling these issues. I didn't time myself, so I don't know if it's 5 minutes or not.
Any points of clarification for Nick? Because we're short on time, I'm just gonna ask one question and then I'll open to the floor. Me and Peter and I were talking, and I told him that I used to hate police when I was a teenager, and I'm sure that's an experience that a lot of people have. And also at the same time, there is this tense relationship with ethnic profiling. So I'd like the panel to explore why is there such a bad relationship between young people, and how do we go about improving that in the future? Who wants to? Peter, would you like to start?
It's a bit difficult for me to speak out here because on the one hand I'm advocating for other drug policies and that gives me the opportunity to speak out for what I'm not supposed to. And in Belgium they don't want me to do this. So I'm off duty right now. Would I be in duty, then I would speak to you about community policing, the role of policing in maintaining democratic values and blah blah blah, and the security issue. And I completely agree with what Professor Croft says. I think I recall, I think it was you who said yesterday evening, does youth need specific policing? And then I said, why does youth need specific policing? Why should there be a specific kind of approach by police towards youth? I think we should police public life. What you're doing in your free time, frankly, I don't think we should get involved in that. Once you start driving a car completely under influence of any substance and you're jeopardizing my security, then I think I should intervene. I think the public space needs policing. And what you do in your private life, if it's not a criminal act, but using drugs is something, there's no victim involved unless maybe yourself when you're having some riskful conduct. If you're only harming yourself, you're not harming anybody else, then frankly I don't think police should intervene by whatsoever means. So I really comply with what the professor was saying. However, I don't think police should be involved in too many issues. If I'm looking at the Belgian state and even the European situation, police has always a voice in any societal matter. When it comes to terrorism, psychiatry, there is no issue where police has no voice, and I think we have too many voices. There are some fields where we have expertise in, and let's stick to that expertise. Do not get mixed in fields where we do not know shit about. When it comes to drugs, there's a lot of policemen who are so-called experts. I don't think there is any expertise in police. We know the law and we know the ways drugs are smuggled. That's what we know. We don't know shit about why people use drugs, what effects have drugs, what products should be combined or should definitely not be combined and so forth. That expertise is not in policing, but we have always a voice, and that is, I think, something that we should work on.
Just as a follow-up to that, you mentioned partnerships as being the way forward. Could you comment a bit more about what those partnerships would look like?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of places, jurisdictions all around the world where people are making efforts to bring multi-sectoral approaches to problems that are complex and involve all sorts of different. The best example I can use to illustrate is the Dutch police have a thing called the Amsterdam police have a thing called the Top 600 project. At the end of each year, they look back and they look at who used the most police resources in the preceding year, take the top 600, and then throw everything at them: housing, employment, counselling, whatever. What are the reasons why you keep coming back to the criminal justice system and using police resources? If you do that, on the other hand, on the health side of things, and look at the people who are using most ambulance, most accident emergency, most primary health care, whatever, in the same period of time, they don't map onto each other, but they overlap a lot, which means that there is something down here that's leading them both into criminal justice involvement and poor health, and then there's feedback between those two areas too, which means we should be operating down here, not up here and not up here, but down here. That's where the partnership needs to happen. Experiments are being made in things like mental health partnership in lots of parts of the world. In lots of parts of the world, police respond to somebody having a mental health crisis and the person ends up dead. That's a far, far too common issue in many, many parts of the world. There's lots of places now that are trialling or are starting to introduce joined up responses where mental health and police respond together, with a very clear understanding that each has their own responsibility, and learning how to work together in the police, ensuring public safety, the mental health person working to calm things down. The Dutch police, again, sorry I'm talking so much about the Dutch police, but I live there and I like working with them. They have a thing called an ambulance specifically for transport of people in that situation, because they found that if everything's settled down, the person's then put in the back of the patrol car, everything arcs up again. They unfortunately call it the psycholance, which I've tried to explain does not sound all that good in English. But partnerships around mental health, partnerships around issues around domestic violence. There's some very, very good initiatives going on in different parts of the world to look at the diversion, pre-arrest diversion, post-arrest diversion, all sorts of different diversion programs so that people are moved out of criminal justice into health system. One of the things that really worries me about that is that you have situations in, you have a lot of programs in the Western world, in the developed world, where diversion programs are increasingly being used for mental health issues, for drug and alcohol issues, for social diversion, for people who are involved with criminal justice because of social issues. In low and middle income countries, what do you do? If the police want to get involved in a diversion program, but there is no community-based mental health or community-based drug and alcohol, what do they do? We work with police in those sort of situations, and the police often, and I mean often, the ones that we work with, would like to be able to do that. So they become proponents and advocates for development of community-based mental health and development of community-based drug and alcohol systems. That's a few small points about development.
Just also the point that discretion is a great power to have as a policeman, and Nick's organising a conference on law enforcement and public health in Toronto for anyone who might be interested. So with that, does anyone have any questions? Go on. Oh, sorry.
My name's Ford. I thank you all for speaking. My story is when I was 17, the state of Texas gave me 5 felonies for drug and alcohol abuse in one evening. And I found myself in 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous at age 15. And because I was white and my parents had money, I only spent 5 days in jail. And I was sent to treatment for about 1.5 years, and I know that when I came out through the 12 steps and that program, I believed in complete abstinence. And in hindsight, I'm 26 now, and my experience now is not complete abstinence. It's I've found another way to start integrating these medicines into my life in a healthy, respectful way, responsible way. When you said earlier, I know that I'm very focused on education and teaching youth about drugs. And so if you interject down here before they reach the legal system, I'm very inspired by that strategy. But there's still addicts out there currently. And once they hit the legal system, not everybody gets to have the same experience that I might have had. How are y'all seeing, are there any states or governments right now who have some sort of drug abuse program, treatment program post coming into the legal system that you see is actually working, that's maybe not promoting complete abstinence, but is actually educating in conjunction with suggesting abstinence for a little bit while you kind of understand yourself better and then move back into the regular world?
I would only add that it's important that civil society, whatever, bring up some knowledge and also train the police, because this relation. If we have to know the law and what is above us, they should also know the reality below their authority. So this training, especially regarding drug use, is very much important. When my friend was telling me about the boom experience of being caught after the festival, she told me she had to help the police guy to identify the substances that the other guys had because he had no idea of it, what it could be. So I think it's very much important, this training relation question, and then to integrate police in all the procedures with youngsters and to attend that the problem will never be drugs. Like the problem can be people and centering people and not like in a health approach, because in the end, if we are talking about youngsters, we are talking about lives and then human rights and not patient criminal approaches on the problem.
And also it has to be said what our colleagues in SSDP were saying with their peer education model, just say no, and we have like the value of peers in educating and is it can't be understated. Do you have a question from the second group before I...
Yeah, just a quick one on Portugal. It's often heard said that with decriminalization, a new philosophy came about moving away from abstinence and promoting kind of manageable drug use, and that's what's promoted through the dissuasion commissions. Do you think that's just not true or not implemented or different from youth
I mean, I added that shortly, because in Italy we had also the criminalization, but it was not the penalization. We had lots of cases which is even worse than going to jail. So, yeah.
And then one more question for the panel. If I think Switzerland has a program where the police kind of drug check what drugs that they seize and then publicize that information sort of like as harm reduction. Are there other police efforts in different countries that are involved in similar?
There was a rash of, there was a substance being sold on the streets of Amsterdam recently that purported to be cocaine. It was in fact very, very pure heroin, and there were quite a number of deaths associated, particularly British tourists. And I got off the train one day at the central station, and there's the big board saying, "Be careful what you're buying on the street." It's whatever. There's been drug checking going on in different circumstances in Netherlands for quite some time. Why more don't do it? I have no idea. There's absolute common sense in it.
Does anyone have any prohibitionist views or anything that sort of counteract
It
this?
just went out.
I would like to add something. We have an early warning system in Europe when all countries share information about drugs that are found. But frankly, that's harm reduction for drug policy. Because if you and then we go into the story of legal markets. You don't need to check alcohol because it's on the bottle. So this whole harm reduction narrative is also, frankly, not. I don't think it's always helping the cause. Focusing on harm reduction is not helping the cause, I think.
I think most of the times we are trying to fix whatever we do with this drug policy, like with this reductionism approach, and harm reduction is a way to fix it. It's not a way to solve it.
In the civil society, we're calling it apparently tertiary prevention. Tertiary prevention, like harms that aren't.
I think that's right. If we had good policy, we would not need harm reduction. Because good policy would be reducing harm.
That you have these stickers on your tables,
And it's already here too.
and they are about evaluation of the last decade and of the results achieved. And we are waiting for that evaluation. We hope that in 2019 we'll have some results, and then the future will be based on that evaluation. So, and the sticker is transparent as we expect it to be.
I'm also from Youth Rights from Czech Republic, and actually right now we are going to focus on drug checking because all Czech Republic has partial decriminalization, which means quite liberal drug policy. The government wants to support drug checking, but the law enforcement bodies are against because the law does not allow to manipulate with the substances, so it will have to be covered under the research, but they are strictly against it. And even there used to be a research, there used to be an ongoing program, they shut it down with saying, if you're going to continue, we're going to put you to jail or we will make you big problems. And now the question is opened again, and with the government support, but there is a discussion with the law enforcement who is following the law. So, yeah, maybe we should also think of how to change some laws.
Cool. Thank you very much.